morning and welcome. You're tuned in and listening to Back Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. And hey, thanks for tuning in. We are back. It's been a long time, pretty good while since we have done a podcast. I've been promising you guys I was going to come back. You know, it's really hard. I took a long break for a lot of different reasons. One of them being, doing a podcast, hosting a podcast regularly it's exhausting. It is very much a time-intensive, labor-intensive project. And, even though I love it and I loved doing the show, the break was definitely, it was warranted. I needed a break. But once you take a break, it's so hard to come back. You get used to not having that grind, to not having to put in so much time. And we had so many struggles with Blog Talk Radio, but I was pleasantly surprised. I logged in and my settings had not been changed. Usually, you don't use it for like a couple of weeks. They would change your settings and whatnot, but my settings had not been changed, and we're doing this via direct connect. So we'll see how it goes. We're gonna and by the way, we're doing it live. We're not doing it fake live like we were doing to try to get away from some of the issues, the audio issues that we had with BTR. We're doing it live, and my intent is to continue to do it live, not fake live, and to start taking callers again. I'm really interested in your thoughts. I want you to call in. I want you to weigh in on some of the topics that we're going to be discussing. The call-in number, the guest call-in number is 646-200-4149. So mark that down. We probably won't take any calls today except for our guest in the second part of this first hour, Adam Barlow. My friend Adam Barlow is going to call in. We're going to be talking about what's going on in England. Crazy times in the UK. He's going to fill us in on their loss and what's going on with their economic situation. It's scary times sort of that we live in. We're going to start with some topics that we talk about fairly regularly on here. Domestic violence we do talk about because, as you guys know, I am a survivor. I talk about that. Not my personal story, but about domestic violence, about stalking, about violence against women, because it is a topic that is important to me, someone with some personal experience with it. And it's sort of back in the forefront. It's always, kind of in the forefront, right? Because we can't stop being awful to one another. Gun control is back in the news, and it's a big topic of conversation right now. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to touch upon, there was a very interesting article by, his name is escaping me, Sports Illustrated writer, and he asked, I think 5 or 6 sports media personalities whether they, incorporated, I suppose is the best word, whether they incorporated politics into their coverage of sports. And Adam Schefter took a lot of heat for his response, basically saying that no, you have to separate the two. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. And then we're going to probably at the very end of the show, again, this is live, so we'll have to see how things play out. My intent today is to do an hour and a half. We'll see if I can manage to talk that long. You guys know that I don't usually have any trouble talking. We want to talk about Buddy Ryan dying, Pat Summitt. We're going to talk about her quite a bit. And I want to talk about the Scott Brown, Elizabeth Warren, Hillary thing. The Daily Show had a very interesting week as well with their tweet about the recent abortion decision arising out of the political situation down in Texas. Texas always doing very interesting things politically and legislatively and legally, I suppose. for women, for minorities, for immigrants. And so the Daily Show got into some hot water. If you're surprised about the Daily Show's tweet, you haven't been paying any attention. I was not a terribly big fan of the person they chose to replace Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart himself has had some interesting things to say since he left the Daily Show. He had some very interesting comments about Hillary Clinton. Politics is always a funny animal. Definitely an interesting time right now for the upcoming election, with the two very polarizing candidates that are going to be on the menu. Hillary Clinton, I'm not sure why she's having to vet Elizabeth Warren. Maybe someone smarter than me can explain that. But it does look like Elizabeth Warren is going to be the possibly her vice presidential nominee, the person who's going to run with her. They're taking on the Donald guy who every time he opens his mouth, he contradicts himself. He has, it's interesting that Donald Trump is doing so well in this country. And it kind of ties into, I guess, the theme that we're going with in terms of gun control and other things. So listen, let's just go ahead and talk about gun control. People are talking about gun control because it's always a topic, right? But there's been another terrorist incident. We have been killing each other. Humans are a violent species. We've been killing each other since the dawn of time, since way before guns were ever invented. We know killing each other is bad. We know being bad to each other is bad. We know being violent toward one another is bad. Yet we continue to do it. But gun control is back on the hot topic menu because of some of these recent events. And I'm not, in theory, I'm not opposed to gun control. I think sensible legislation regarding anything is good, but prohibition has never been shown to work in anything. And if you think that eradicating guns, taking guns away is going to solve the problem, I suspect you're very much going to be disappointed, because until we get at the root cause of why we do these things, why we are a violent society, we're going to talk about Game of Thrones. I didn't mention that in the introduction. We're going to talk about Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is one of the most violent TV shows I've ever watched, but I watch it. A lot of people watch it. It's, a very popular television show. They don't have guns, but they seem to have no difficulty killing lots of people. Lots of people on that show. But, the gun control thing is interesting to me because the overwhelming amount of coverage on it came out on the very same day that I read an article about a woman who lives in Tennessee, where I live, and she, like myself, she had been stalked by a man that she had been romantically involved with. And while they were installing a security system, she understandably wanted to get some protection. She had a gun. I have a gun. I suspect we have a gun for much the same reason. And while they were installing this, she found him underneath her bed, in her house, underneath her bed. She shot him in the foot, called the authorities, and he was apprehended, and we'll see what happens with that. Notoriously, domestic abusers historically, I suppose is a better word, historically they have not seen much in the way of jail time or really any repercussions from that. I think times are changing in that regard. I think that we're seeing a changing of the guard there. But it's always been an issue that the legal system, or it was long an issue that the legal system did not seriously take these things into account. It was viewed as the reason why we call it domestic violence, which is just a term I absolutely abhor. I hate it. But the reason why we call it that is because it was viewed as a personal matter between a man and a woman. And, women being the lying Jezebels that they are, wink, wink, we were very much disbelieved in our reports, our complaints, our going to the authorities historically was of very little use because it just wasn't taken seriously. But I do think that's changing. We're seeing a lot of progress in that area. But still, overwhelmingly, domestic abusers don't really see much in the way of repercussions. And so we'll see what happens with him. But, I often see people when they comment on gun control talk about how it, is far more likely to be used against the woman and people get killed in their own homes. And, I don't know that we can have a rational discussion about it, but I hope that we can. But, I don't, until we get at the root cause of why we think violence is the answer, why, despite knowing that, killing, hurting, being awful to one another is wrong, we still continue to do it. Until we get at these root causes, I don't think we're going to see any progress in anything. And it's interesting. There's such a groundswell of hate that sort of underpins this election cycle in this country. I'm very interested to talk to Adam Barlow here in a few minutes. He's going to be calling in. We're going to talk about the political and economic situation in the UK. They're also going through some interesting. Very interesting times there with their economic situation, the recent vote. So I'm interested to hear his thoughts on what's going on over there. But in this country, I think that's why Donald Trump is doing so well, right? I mean, we seem to be living in an age of anger and dissatisfaction, and I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure where that's coming from, but it definitely seems to be a thing, which is a good way, I suppose, to segue into this whole politics versus sports thing. Oh, Richard Deitch. Oh, thank you. His name, I can't believe I follow him on Twitter, and he's a very well-known person. But I'm so terrible with names. I could not think of his name. So anyway, there you go. Sorry about that. So his article was interesting, and I thought that Jamil Hill, and you guys know I'm not a big Bomani Jones fan by any means, but I thought they were right in a lot of what they said. And it's interesting how we define political. The word politics itself originally came from Greek words that incorporated citizen and city, state, your relationship between your city and your citizenship. And so I got on the internet and was looking up the origin of the word politics and the definition, and it sort of struck me. One of the definitions of political, of politics, of politic, not plural but singular, is, let me pull it up here. The total complex of relations between people living in society, and this is the Merriam-Webster definition. And you see politics being used in one sense as how people interact, just in a general manner with one another. It wouldn't be politic to do that. It means, in one sense, it means how you choose to frame, your interactions. And in that sense, and Adam Schefter said, you separate the two. But in that sense, Adam Schefter is one of the most politic guys covering sports, because, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all, but he would never do anything. He's just that guy that would never do anything to jeopardize his sources, to jeopardize his status, to jeopardize his position. He's very politic in that sense. And so it's interesting to think about. And as Deadspin pointed out, they wrote about this, covered this, and as they pointed out, some of the things that he does, tweet about and retweet, and the things that he does is very political in nature. But I think that it's impossible to separate the two, because we come from our own set of circumstances, and how we view things, how we approach things is formed by so many different things, and our political leanings are part of that. If you think that Tom Brady's suspension is outside the whole fan thing, but speaking from an objective, if you think that it is bad, legally, that's a political thing. It's formulated by your politics. And so I think that it is very hard to separate the two. I think that, and I don't think that we should, because sports doesn't operate in a microcosm. It's not, as we've learned, it's not separate. You can't separate these things. And when you do, whatever it is suffers from it. And I think that it's a lot better to just acknowledge that all politics is local. Everything really is political, because and let's just say this: decency, basic human rights, basic equality. Do you really want to separate those things from sports? I don't think that you do, right? I mean, what would sports be if it was that dehumanized? It's already dehumanized enough. If it were that dehumanized, what would it be? I think that it would be very much a product that that would be bad. And so I think it's very difficult to do that. But again, just very interesting comments from all those sports personalities about that. We'll continue to talk about that a little bit. I'll continue to think about it. I'm not, I think that you can definitely go overboard, right? I mean, you can't make it all about that. As they say, all things in moderation. There's a balance. You have to have a balance. But I don't think that you can completely ignore it. And I think that when you do, you're fooling yourself, and you're being naive about it, really. I guess that's the bottom line. So the Supreme Court struck down a very terrible, terrible law that placed enormous restrictions on women seeking an abortion. It's interesting how everybody wants to meddle in women's health care, and how so many people seem to think that women aren't able to make decisions for themselves about what to do with their body, about what kind of medical treatment to seek, about whether or not they want to want to have a child. And I think that if you want to have a child, that's great. You should do that. But if you don't want to have a child, you should have. Again, if you try to stop people from doing things, you're just going to cause problems, and women are going to have abortions. Okay, and if you want to make it deadly and hard on them, well, that's just wrong, and it's not the mark of a good society. And so anyway, the Supreme Court very wisely struck down this terrible law. There are a bunch of other laws that are very similar in nature to it. Tennessee always loves to meddle in, women in their pea brains don't know, what to do, how to handle their own health care, their own body. Tennessee loves to meddle with that. And so we'll see what happens in these other states. But the Supreme Court struck down this law, and the Daily Show sent out this tweet. I didn't look it up again. I'm probably going to paraphrase it poorly. Basically, it was you can have an abortion in Texas now. Go celebrate by knocking someone up. And it was just an awful, terrible tweet. And then they tried to apologize, and they messed that up too. When you combine that with Hollywood, the entertainment world is pretty terrible about women in general. And that tweet is just one example. And then you've got Disney. If you're paying attention to what's going on with Johnny Depp, you know that Amber Heard has said that he abused her, that there was some violence in their relationship, and she has filed for divorce. Well, Disney, and I'm definitely going to pull this up because I want to read this to you guys. Disney said the guy, you have to wonder, do any of these guys have women who are helping them formulate their opinions? Anyway, this guy, Bob Iger, who is the CEO of Disney, in regard to the Johnny Depp, and they termed it personal problems, as if, beating the crap out of your significant other is just a personal problem, as opposed to a crime and a terrible, awful thing to do. He said that he wasn't worried about it, that he thinks that the scandal will pass. And he said, then he added, I don't know whether it passes or not. We have Jack Sparrow, acting like, again, like it's no big deal. And this is just, emblematic of how we view and treat, violence against women as if it's, no big deal. So, the entertainment industry is definitely, there's still a lot of progress to be made there, I suppose is the best way to term that. But, that was something else that came up as I was prepping for this show that I couldn't let that slide. I was going to talk about the Justin Timberlake thing. I think I'll reserve that for, maybe for another time. We'll get a guest on here to come on and help us talk about that a little bit. I can't do a show without talking about gaming. So we've got to weave a little bit of gaming in here. before Adam calls in and we have our conversation with him. Oh, I think Adam's already calling in. So we'll take a quick break. When we come back, Adam Barlow, my friend from overseas, from across the pond, as they say, is going to be on, and we're going to have a chat about what's going on over there. So stay tuned in. You are listening to Back Talk with Sharona. All right, welcome back. As promised, we're joined by Adam. Is that you?
Yes,
Adam.
Sharona. How are you?
I'm
Hello?
great. How are you? How are you doing? Thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me back on. It's great to see the show's back on air again.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be back on air, and I'm so proud that that you agreed to be my first guest back. Interesting times going on over there across the pond. I have been on hiatus. I've been on a bit of a break, so I'm woefully ignorant of how all this came about, the economic situation, and then we're going to talk some soccer. But I want to start. I'm going to rearrange things. I want to start with Brexit, I guess is what they're calling it. Tell, if you will,
Yeah.
first of all, before we even jump into that, I'm sorry. I should let you reintroduce yourself to my audience. Tell them who you are, what you do.
Hi. Well, thank you, Sharona. Yes, myself and my partner, Pat Summitt, who lives out in Los Angeles, we run the Women's World Soccer Show. Well, it's called Women's World Football Show, but obviously it covers soccer. The women's game all over the world, really. It's a busy time for us at the moment because we've got the two leagues in North America and the United Kingdom are underway. And, of course, we've got the Rio Olympics in less than a month. So we'll be busy covering that and women's football all over the world.
Well, you're one of my favorite people who do cover, the women's game. And I know that you're a big, of course, we call it soccer, right? You guys call it football.
Yeah.
We call it soccer.
Yeah.
You're one of my go-to sources. We've got a few go-to sources on that. So we definitely want to talk about that loss. And you had an interesting social media tweet. I'm going to ask you about that too. But so you live in the UK. Now, what do they call it? Is it the UK now? I mean, most people say England. But what do they call it over there?
It is the United Kingdom or Great Britain, whichever one you want to use. The United Kingdom comprises of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
How do people
either
feel?
The UK or GB, fine.
Like people over here, we kind of colloquially call it England to encompass, the whole, all the tribes, so to speak. How do you guys feel about that when we do it?
It doesn't bother the English as much. Obviously, Scotland and Wales might take a little bit of a different view towards it, but most people are fine with it, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try to do better. I fall into that bad habit, even though I do know better, right? So Great Britain or United Kingdom, that's the correct phrasing to use there.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes. So
all right.
It's fine. Everybody knows what you mean. So.
Well, I don't. I never want to really offend. I'm very politic that way, and I want to do term it the right way. So I'm woefully ignorant about how we got to this situation economically, the vote, and all of that. Can you give us a bit of a background and tell us how all this came about?
Yes, certainly. 3 years. The government in England, in the United Kingdom, we have two major parties. One is the Conservative Party, which is it's kind of like your Republican Party, and you have the Labour Party, which is the Democrats.
Right. Okay.
Now, the Conservative Party tends to be backed by big donors, very traditionalist kind of people. And for a long time in the Conservative Party, there's been certain MPs or senators, as you would call them, that would want the United Kingdom to break away from the European Union. At the last general election, to try and keep the party together, because the party was going to split up and was under pressure from smaller parties to the right, but the Prime Minister David Cameron promised that if he won the election outright, he would give the country a referendum on Britain's membership of the EU. Now, there hasn't been a referendum since the early 70s, so quite a long time ago, and the referendum took place last Thursday.
So why do they view the EU in such a disfavorable fashion?
There's a number of reasons. The first one is immigration, because as the EU grows and you get some of like the weaker countries have joined, places like in the last 10 years you've had places like Poland, Lithuania, Czech Republic, places like that. As soon as you join the EU, you can literally go and live and work in any country. So countries such as Great Britain and Germany have seen huge numbers of migration, and that's affected. It's kind of the problem with it is it's not being spread over the country. So some cities and towns have had a lot of migration as people go and work in the agricultural sector and factories and that kind of thing. And some people feel that it's changing the landscape.
It sounds very much like what's going on over here.
Yes, it is. Both sides, it does mirror the whole kind of one of the reasons why Trump's come through with the immigration. It's very similar over here. A lot of the people that wanted to leave are based in areas that have seen large numbers of immigration, sadly. So there are other reasons. I mean, to join the EU, you have to pay a weekly fee. I can't remember the exact figure, but basically millions of pounds get sent to the EU, and it gets distributed throughout Europe. Now, some of that money does come back, and the EU funds a lot of schemes in Britain as well. But those are the two real reasons. Immigration was the big talking point, really, sadly, in this referendum, where it should have been about the economic plus side of being in the EU. It did kind of get hijacked by immigration, I'm afraid.
Well, it does sound very similar to what's going on in this country with immigration being a big topic, and of course, do you pay much attention to American politics? Are you familiar with what's going on politically over here?
Yes, I do, because I've got good friends in the States. I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to politics, so I have been following it keenly and with interest.
Well, I'm going to have you on more often then. So you're familiar with Donald Trump and his shtick and how he is using the topic of immigration to sort of marshal his troops, so to speak. And is unemployment an issue in Great Britain?
It's been coming the last 3 or 4 years. It's actually been coming down. Again, it's certain areas in the United Kingdom we have kind of a north-south divide. Really, I mean, well, I say that basically London has its own little economy. The GDP and economic growth figures in London dwarf the rest of the country. But I don't know. I think it's about 1.5 million, something like that. So it's not just. I mean, during the financial crisis, it shot up to like over 3 million. But it has been gradually coming down. But a lot of it is like what kind of jobs are being created. Are we just creating low-skilled jobs with low pay? Are we creating part-time jobs? Are we creating temporary jobs? So yes, the job figures are coming down, but there's so many variables in it. You can't really put your finger on where we stand with that.
Now, that's definitely the same thing over here. And, it's sometimes hard to trust the numbers because, they're skewed a little bit to kind of favor whoever's in power at the moment. And so, exactly. but you're right. And that's very much a layered kind of arena anyway. As you mentioned, you have people who, leave the labor force, and you have unreported laborers, and all kinds of different things. So it's really a difficult thing. So the referendum was in favor of leaving the EU. Can that be reversed, and if so, what would be the process to do that?
I don't think it can be reversed, no. The result was 52% leave to 48 remain. Now, all the polls leading up to it said that it was going to be a tight win for remain, and the markets took that into consideration and so forth. But it's about a 2-year process before 2 years basically to leave. But the Prime Minister was leading the campaign to remain in the EU. He resigned on Friday morning when the result went against him. And what's going to happen now is we're going to find a new Prime Minister. We're not having a general election. It will be somebody from the Conservative Party. And then once the new Prime Minister is appointed, we will then start the formal process of leaving the European Union, I believe.
Wow, the market responded in a rather dramatic fashion. This is sort of all unprecedented to me. I can't remember. I'm sure that I can't remember when a superpower was down, and I think Britain still has that that cachet. I mean, they don't involve themselves like the United States does. But they're still a major power. I can't remember when a major power was downgraded like that.
No, I mean, the pound has been creeping back up. It's not up to where it was, but it's slowly getting there. But what didn't help is because they all thought the Remain was going to win, 2 days beforehand, the pound went up and everyone was like buying the stocks, thinking it's going to be worth even more. When the result came in, so it was kind of, it's gone up disproportionately. Then when the result came in, obviously it had further to drop, but yes, it was a huge drop. I'm not totally sure how the FTSE and the share index is doing, but I know the pound is steadily climbing. But on Friday morning it literally was all panic stations, and I know shares in banks were particularly hard hit.
Yeah, it's very interesting. What do you suspect is going to be the future in terms of Great Britain's relationship with the EU and its economic outlook?
I think long term, I think there will have to be some sort of trade deal between the EU and Great Britain. Simply the fact that we sell them stuff, we both buy a lot of goods from each other. Now, at the moment, everybody's kind of posturing and squaring up to each other. But I think if the months go ahead, calm heads will prevail because both sides of this need each other. I mean, Germany's second biggest market in the EU is Great Britain for selling like cars and Mercedes and BMW and everything. So Angela Merkel isn't going to want that trade to end. I don't expect the EU to be favourable to Britain entirely. I think there's a lot of negotiations and a lot of wrangling to go on. But I think in the short term, for the next couple of months, I think it'll just quietly die down. And then once the new Prime Minister gets elected, then I think we'll really start to see. But as this is all unprecedented, no country's ever left the EU. So nobody really knows what is going to happen.
Not living there, I mean, it's sort of fascinating to me to be on the outside looking in and not having although, nobody lives in a vacuum, and the repercussions from, what is happening with Great Britain could definitely reverberate, worldwide. I mean, it's going to have an effect on worldwide markets. I don't think there's any question about that. But in a sense, we are isolated from it. From a political standpoint, is the Prime Minister in trouble?
Well, he's already resigned, but he's staying on 3 months till they find a new leader. But I think the ramifications are going to be political because what's happened now, there's lots of countries in Europe which are kind of sceptical to the EU, and they've now seen one of the biggest countries walk out. I mean, you're talking about the political implications. In France, the far-right party, the Front National, they're polling quite well in the polls in the French election around the corner next year. Now, if for some crazy way they take power in France, then they promise there's going to be a referendum in France about EU membership. And I think you could see like a copycat referendum going all over Europe. So it's a long shot, but it could be the start of the EU unravelling and a new kind of EU forming. I think I'm more interested in how it's politically going to shape up, because I think financially the markets will recover. It may take a while, but they will get back.
Well, the banks control everything. Banks control everything, and they're going to make sure, that that stability reigns. I agree with you. I think the political fallout is going to be the most fascinating thing to watch, and I hope that you'll come back and talk some more about that ongoing situation. But let's talk some sports a little bit. England with their devastating loss. Give us a rundown on how we got to where we are with England's loss. Yes,
this was England were a complete embarrassment, to be fair. We're in the European Championships. They basically
now for the casual soccer fan, what does that mean? What is that?
It's a championship. It's only for the teams in Europe. So there's 52 teams started in the qualifiers. We've now got that down to 24 teams, and they all have a tournament. It's in a different country every year. This year it's been hosted in France. Top 24 teams come together and contest the championships. Now, in the group set, they're split into 4 groups in the first round, and you play everybody in your group, and like the top 2 teams go through, or in some groups the top 3. But England only managed to get a draw with Russia, who were one of the worst teams in it in the first game. They then escaped past Wales 2-1 before drawing 0-0 with Slovakia, and they were pretty dire in all those 3 matches. That then meant that they came to the second round, which is like it's like an NFL playoffs from here on in. It's basically one game, and then if you lose, you're on the next plane home. And they came up against Iceland, who were the smallest team in the competition. I think their entire population is something like 300,000, something like that. And Iceland gained, even though England took the lead and went 1-0 up, Iceland weren't fazed by that and came back to win 2-1 and inflict probably England's most embarrassing football defeat for the last 50 years.
Well, their leader resigned right afterward, didn't he?
He did. I'm glad you mentioned him. He was the highest paid coach in the entire, out of the 24 finalists. He was the highest paid coach, probably earning something like £4 million a year for doing the job. Whereas one of the Icelandic joint managers is a part-time dentist. So that gives you some.
That's funny. Wow. I know. He was taking a lot of heat on social. Yeah, he was taking a lot of heat on social media, and it was rather, but before and after. Before, during, and after, and so it wasn't a surprise that he did, but it was a surprise that it was so quick. Do you think, was he already on the hot seat?
I think when you're the manager of England and you're earning that kind of money, you're always on a hot seat. But this was his 3rd tournament. He was in charge of the last European Championships. He was in charge in the World Cup when England managed to go out in the first round. And I think he needed to get to at least to the semi-finals to keep his job this time around. And England were a long way off the play. They're a long way off the quality of the top teams.
I gotcha. So what is next for England soccer? I'm sorry. Now, did they call it England soccer team, or is it Great Britain? What is the correct phrasing there?
It's England. We each have different teams. I mean, at this championship, Wales and Northern Ireland.
Of
The only
course.
thing
Now
that
that makes
Great Britain
sense. I
has
should have
is,
known better.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Okay.
not at
I'm
all.
sorry.
My friend, my friend, I've been doing a show with my friend in America for 3 years, and I'm still trying to teach her it. But basically, in sport, the only things that Great Britain at is tennis and the Olympic Games. Everything else is England,
Okay.
Wales,
Well,
Northern
the
Ireland,
Olympics are
Scotland.
right around the corner. That's going to be fun.
Yes, it is. I'm looking forward to that.
So what's next for England's soccer team?
Well, they need to appoint a new coach for the first thing, but they don't have any games coming up till September, so there's not going to be a mad rush for it. They'll take their time with it. And then we start qualifying for the next World Cup, which is being held in Russia, of all places. And that's the next thing that still it takes about a year to qualify because you're split into groups and you have to play teams home and away.
Okay.
And they're getting ready for the World Cup.
All right, cool. Well, so interesting. Now I know that you're, even though you're across the pond, you're very involved in American sports. Did you watch women's basketball? Were you a Pat Summitt fan?
Yes, I am actually. When I was in LA last year, Patty took me to watch the LA Sparks. So I'm delighted to see them doing so well this year because last year they finished bottom of the conference, but I don't think they've lost a game yet this year, have they? So that's refreshing news.
Yeah, sad news. We're going to be talking about Pat Summitt in the final 30 minutes. Yeah. We're only going to go, I think we'll only do an hour and a half today, but in the final 30 minutes of the show, she's going to be a topic. She meant so much, not only to women's basketball, and I mean, let's be real here. She meant everything to women's basketball, but to the sports world in general. She was just a huge figure, and it very sad to see her pass away. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at it's one of those you don't need to say much because the numbers say everything, don't they? I mean, the most winningest coach in women's basketball, and a kind of a trailblazer, I think, really, for other coaches to follow, isn't it? I think you always need role models. You need, like, Martina Navratilova and people like that. So you do need that type of coach.
Yeah, definitely. I want to ask you, I was talking in the first 30 minutes of the show about there was an article, Richard Deitch of Sports Illustrated asked some media personalities about whether they incorporate politics into their coverage, and there were some interesting responses. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that you can truly separate politics from anything?
I think there's politics, sadly, in everything. If it's, GMs battling with owners, or political groups supporting clubs. I think, sadly, politics, it's weird. Politics affects every bit of our life, but some people don't realise it. So there's definitely politics in sport. I mean, especially, like the governing office, like, the Roger Goodell things and people like that. They're all influenced by politics, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I think that you have to be careful, right? I mean, you can't go overboard in anything. I said that you had to be, moderate, all things in moderation, but it is impossible to separate it. And, when you get to, like to Olympics and, the international events, there is a national pride, which in and of itself is sort of political.
Oh, yes. I mean, the best thing is think back to the 80s when we had the games in Los Angeles and then the games in Moscow, and teams were, boycotting the games, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
You just remember how far we've come since those back.
Yeah, that's a great point. Mhm. Yeah, that's a great point. And and you do see, I mean, when it comes down to it, we're all humans, right? With and we're formulated, our whole person is formulated by our politics, our beliefs, and you see athletes.
Definitely.
And Muhammad Ali comes to mind. He was a guy who, he certainly. Yeah, he certainly didn't separate that. So it's very interesting. It's an interesting topic of conversation, and I'm going to be thinking some more about it. I want to ask you another topic that we're going to talk about in the final 30 minutes of the show is Game of Thrones. That's a big television show over here. Is it big in Great Britain?
It absolutely is, Sharona, yes. I have to confess that my girlfriend is a huge, huge fan of this.
Oh, yeah?
It was quite tough on Monday night. It was very awkward Monday night because we had the football. I had to watch the football, obviously, and she was watching Game of Thrones upstairs on her laptop. So she wasn't very happy, but yes, it's absolutely huge over here, and it's got a very, very big following.
So now she watches it. Do you watch it?
I don't. I tried watching about 5 minutes of it, but it's a little too gory for me.
Yeah, it is very violent. I was talking about that when I also talked about gun control in the first 30 minutes. And, we humans we're a violent species. We just are. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't want to get too deep into that. So do you mind telling me, what did she think about the season finale?
To be honest, I didn't really ask her about it because it was more wound up in the football. But from the impression I got was that she enjoyed it, I think.
Oh, good.
I think apparently there was lots of surprises in it, and
there it was,
and all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's not a surprise, right? I mean, the death count on that show is pretty high. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was a very thrilling and exciting finale. I'm very excited to see what they do in the next season. And I think we only have 1 or 2 more seasons, so that's kind of sad. What other television shows are big in Great Britain?
There's a couple of channels that show. We get a lot of like the American TV shows come over. I mean, some of it's kind of like I don't want to say trashy, but we get like Duck Dynasty, Man vs. Food. That kind of show, Lizard Tuck showing. There's a channel just showing that kind of thing. But we like our Bake Off, the Great British Bake Off and Dancing with the Stars, that kind of thing, really.
Interesting. Great stuff. Adam, I really appreciate you joining me, and always such a pleasure to chat with you. What's going on with you right now? What is on your on your plate, so to speak, on your agenda in terms of the show and in your coverage of sports?
At the moment we get, as I say, we're getting ready for the Olympic Games. We've got people coming on from all over the world. I'm speaking to one of the New Zealand players tonight, actually.
Cool.
About that. And it's really busy at the moment, and hopefully I'm going over to Germany in a few months' time and recording a section with a couple of German players and our friend in Germany. So, yes, it's really busy, and just thanks again for having me on the show, Shane. I always catch up with it, and I look forward to listening to it as it goes on.
Hey, let me ask you this before you get out of here, and we didn't even talk about American soccer. What's your impression? Of course, they had a loss as well. What's your impression of the current status of American soccer?
I think there's 2 very different scenarios. The women's team is that I'm really excited because not only did they win the World Cup, but they got some great young players coming through, players such as Mallory Pugh and Julie Johnson, and the future's really bright. Unfortunately, the US men is very much in the same situation as England are in at the moment. Should we just say they should be doing a bit better than what they are? I think that's the nicest way of putting it.
Yeah, the men's soccer has some. It's like they either have players who are too young or players who are aging and on the verge of leaving the game, which is my very casual impression. And it's still very much a work in progress. I agree. I think, women's soccer, of course, we've focused on, because there are fewer, opportunities, and with Title IX and all of that, women's soccer gets a little bit more focus, than men. Men have more opportunities with football and basketball and baseball, other big name sports. And so soccer hasn't had that cachet. I think that's changing, and youth sports is going to make that a different thing. But it's still very much a work in progress, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Adam, tell everybody where they can find your website, find your show, find you out there on social media.
Certainly, thank you. Yes, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at WWF Show. The website is wwfshow.com. We release a new show every fortnight, and the last one we did just came out on Monday, so there's a nice, fresh episode for everybody to check out.
You should definitely check it out. They do great work. It's a great showcase for women and for soccer. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a great day. Well, I don't know what time. Now, see, Adam knows this because I confessed it to him. Time zones get me every time. What time is it over there?
It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Sorry, 5 o'clock in the evening here.
Okay, so have a great evening.
Yes, you have a great day as well, Sharon. And keep up the fantastic work with the show.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, that was Adam Barlow. Great stuff from him. It's always such a pleasure to talk to him and at the WWF show. They really do excellent work, and they're so great about showcasing women who play the game. And if you haven't checked out their work, definitely do so. Interesting things going on over there in England. I'm not sure. It is interesting how a lot of the things that Adam talked about, the things that he mentioned, are parallels, over here. We'll have to try to scrounge up some other guests from across the seas, and maybe talk about political and economic issues in other countries. All politics is local, but again, no one lives in a vacuum. And with internet and social media and what have you, we're also interconnected. I didn't ask Adam about social media. Dang it. I'll have to ask him. Adam, like me, seems to have a love-hate relationship with social media. So I saw him log on either yesterday or the day before, and he was like, they're still talking about England's loss. I'm logging back off. Social media is such an interesting animal. Not only did I take a hiatus, a break from podcasting, I took a social media break, which is always so cleansing. It's so freeing. It really is a great thing to do. I highly recommend it. Now, mine probably lasted a little bit longer, maybe than it should have, and I'm still slowly weaving myself back into being back on social media and being more interactive. There were a lot of reasons why I chose to take that hiatus from from podcasting, but from social media, and the anger that I spoke about, this underlying wave of dissatisfaction and anger is one of the reasons why I opted to take a longer social media break than what I ordinarily would have. We're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk some gaming. I want to talk about Pat Summitt and Buddy Ryan and Johnny Manziel, mental illness. So stay tuned in. You are listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. right, welcome back. You're tuned in and listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. As always, thank you so much for listening. I don't know that we'll do a full 30 minutes in this final portion of the show. I think I set it up actually for 3 hours. That was very ambitious. We are not going to do a 2 or 3 hour show, at least not today. We might do one next week. We're going to gradually ease back into this thing. But I want to talk about Johnny Manziel, about mental illness, about dependency. And I don't know Johnny Manziel, and I'm purely speculating that there are, that there are issues there that has led to his behavior. The violence that was alleged between him and his girlfriend, and he saw the pictures and all of that. I'm not going to get into the legalities there. Very interesting comments from his father, from his agent, for everyone who, I shouldn't say that. Let me back up and rephrase. Many of the adults surrounding Johnny Manziel have expressed concern for his well-being, for his mental status, for his health. So it does look like there are some things that that are going on with him from an emotional and a dependency standpoint that that we can extrapolate from all of that. I was very concerned, and I think that his father probably loves him. Again, we are all a product of our environment, of our upbringing, of our family, our coaches, our teachers. There are so many people that impact who we become, and Johnny Manziel's father, obviously is someone who impacted him. I wonder about their relationship. I was very concerned. I think that he genuinely loves his son, and I think that he's genuinely concerned about his son. But I'm very concerned about how he goes about expressing that and the process. They say tough love sometimes is necessary, but when you're dealing with someone who has emotional issues and dependency issues, support is so important. And you have to be very careful about how you encourage them to get the help that you believe that they need. And the Johnny Manziel situation is very sad. I mean, I think that he is on a downward spiral where he ends up. His NFL career is probably over. His parents are wealthy. He apparently still has money. He's out. You see him out partying and doing all of this stuff. So how that's going to wind up, how that is going to end up is going to be very interesting. I hope that it doesn't end in tragedy, but quite often these situations do, and we'll have to see how that situation does progress, how it continues to develop. But I would encourage the people around Johnny Manziel to educate themselves on mental illness, to educate themselves on dependency issues, and to understand that yes, a certain amount of tough love is necessary. That support's necessary too, and I hope that he gets the help that it looks like he needs. So, just a very troubling situation with him. So So let's talk a little bit about Game of Thrones. I just a little bit of a background with my Game of Thrones viewership. I don't profess to be an expert on Game of Thrones. I would consider myself a casual viewer. For the first time at all this season, sat down and watched it as it was airing on Sunday night for the season finale, and I had to catch up on the episode before the season finale aired. So I'm a casual viewer. I mean, I watch it, and I kind of came in late to it. I saw everybody. I'm not a big television person anyway. If I'm watching television, it's usually sports or a movie, something like that. So I kind of came into it late, and I saw people tweeting about it. Talking about it on social media. And so I was like, well, okay, I need to check this out to try this. But it probably took 2 or 3, maybe 3 seasons before I actually did that. And then, I got hooked, and so I caught up on it, and I got hooked. And I definitely don't read fanfic. I don't read any of the, well, I shouldn't say, I probably have read maybe 3 or 4 articles talking about, theories, and that's over the course of we're in season 6 of 6 seasons. I've read like maybe 3 or 4, and it's just not, I just don't do that. If you do, that's fine. You go. That's, everybody has their own thing. So I wasn't aware that this theory, about Jon Snow's parentage had been out there, and so I've been, watching. Like the past couple of seasons, I had been, and of course they've been alluding to it, right? So this isn't like, some revelation here. So I've been, Jon Snow is not Ned Stark's son. He's his nephew, and his parentage has been, kind of a big sub-theme weaving through it. And I had said on another one of my shows, Going for Two was back in Sharona, which, by the way, airs tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Be there. Check it out. It's a great show. That does a great job leading us on that show. Anyway, I had said on that show several months ago, that I thought that Jon Snow was Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, their son. Some people seem to think that there's still the possibility that he's Robert Baratheon's son. I don't know. I mean, I think, when you saw that final scene with, with her saying, "Don't tell Robert, what he'll do," I think that alluded to the fact that, he might kill the baby or do something bad or whatever. I think, to me, the most likely scenario is that Jon Snow is he's part of the Dragonborn family, to borrow a gaming term, which is we're going to talk about here in a minute. We'll wrap up this show with some gaming and Pat Summitt talk. So I think that's probably the more likely scenario. It's going to be, I'm fascinated to think what they're going to do with, with that portion of it. And, next season is going to be, it's probably going to be a battle between all the kick-ass, badass women on there, right? Because, you saw Cersei. And I have to say this, too. I was watching the after show where they, the HBO people, talk about the episode and what have you. And one of the guys on there, I enjoy that. One of the guys on there said that Cersei, that the thing about, one of the more humanizing things about Cersei was her status as a mother and how much she loved her children. And, I heard him say that, and I was like, I guess. Because to me, that was always kind of one of the more creepier things. And then, incest is, very much disfavored in our society. It hasn't always been that way. And there are some cultures and whatever that don't view that like we do, but we kind of view incest as an icky, awful thing, inbreeding as an icky, awful thing, and so I heard him say that, and I was like, yeah, but to me that was one of the creepier things, her kids and her love for her kids and whatever, and Cersei's kids. Marcella was the best of the bunch, right? I mean, Tommen was weak, and spoiler alert, he showed his weakness by his the manner of his death, and we'll just leave it at that. The older son, he was a monster, and it was because of Cersei's parentage, right? I mean, how did they become who they are? If not because of that. I mean, again, we're formulated by the people around us. And so, I don't know, maybe that is humanizing. But that, to me, this just struck me as an interesting comment. But Cersei sitting on the Iron Throne now, and her relationship with Jaime could be in jeopardy. The look that they exchanged at the end of that episode was rather curious. We'll see how that relationship develops, continues to, because you thought that they had reunited, right? Reunited, and it felt so good. But now, with the death of all their children and her sitting on the throne, Cersei is going to do whatever she can to protect that. And we can debate whether that's the right thing or not. But she is, and just like Dany is, the Mother of Dragons is sailing across the seas to try to take back what she considers to be her rightful place upon that throne. She's got her ships courtesy of another strong female character, and then you've got Lady Mormont, who has been one of her biggest supporters. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Sansa now. Had moving on to Sansa in Winterfell. Sansa is there with Jon, and Lady Mormont has been one of their biggest supporters. Jon now declared to be the rightful heir there with the death of Rickon. And I just have to say, I am so glad that the Boltons and the Freys got every bit of what they deserved. It was one of the best things about that episode. I can't wait to see how Arya returns to her home. That's going to be something to keep an eye on. But overall, I thought it was definitely a thrilling and exciting season finale. I thought that some of the visuals were incredible, and it was just very well done. We'll see what happens in the next season, but you would have to think that it's going to be a showdown for who's going to lead what is going to be the big war with the White Walkers, who winter has come, as it became very clear at the end of that episode. Winter has come. The big battle isn't going to be between. There's going to be a big battle, but the biggest battle isn't going to be between. It shouldn't be between. If they decimate each other in who tries to win the throne, who's going to fight the White Walkers? That has to be a concern. You're going to need a rather large army to. Of course, she's got. Dany has the dragons, so maybe that's what's going to help win that final battle. But you would think that's going to be the ending, the show ending with a season of them fighting that. So I'm excited. I can't wait to see what what the next season or two is going to bring. It does sound like Zach keeps me informed on all of this. It does sound like there are 2 more seasons, I believe. So we've got a little bit more viewer pleasure to come. So we're gonna have to wait probably 6 or 7 months before we get another episode. That's one of the bad things about being a fan of a television show. When it goes on hiatus, you have to wait. The wait is so long. So it was very exciting. I couldn't sleep that night. It had me so hyped up. My sleep patterns have been kind of messed up anyway, and I couldn't sleep last night either. For no particular reason. It was like 3:30 when I got to bed, and I was like, I gotta do this show tomorrow, and I haven't gotten any sleep, and so I went ahead and set the alarm. I was like, you know what, we're gonna sleep or not, the show must go on. We're still gonna do this. So, and we managed to do it. We're almost an hour and a half in. We gotta talk some gaming. I've been playing this online game, the Elder Scrolls Online. I'm a big Elder Scrolls fan. I talk about that gaming series a lot on here. I came into my fandom with it through Morrowind, and of course then Oblivion. And Skyrim is probably like my least favorite of the single player games. And I enjoy it, and I still play it occasionally. But I didn't play it nearly as much as I played Oblivion and Morrowind. Those were definitely the 2 games that I played the most of. And so it's rather interesting playing this online game. So I'm not a big multiplayer game player. I didn't do I maybe played a World of Warcraft a little bit, and back in the day I played City of Heroes. I played some Perfect World. I played some online games. I'm not big on that. I far prefer single player, but I've been playing this multiplayer online game, and it's fun. I enjoy it a lot more than I thought that I would, by the way. And for it, one of the big issues that I had with like Skyrim and the whole gaming series now is like, well, where is the voice acting? Where is, you don't have voice acting. You don't get your own voice. Well, it makes more sense not to have that in the multiplayer game because, you can turn your mic on and communicate with other players. But it is pretty, it's interesting playing another online game and interacting with other gamers and seeing just the general interaction there. I enjoy it a lot more than I thought I would. I've sort of, as fun as it is, it's kind of exhausting dealing with other gamers too. And you see human nature very much in action. I'm not going to go into detail on that comment today. Maybe we'll have a show where we talk about that. But you definitely see there are some Bush League gamers in that game. I'll just leave it at that. And you see that, and you have to deal with that. And you're like, I wish they'd just go away. But kind of like a microcosm of human interaction in human nature. It's pretty fascinating to see. Yeah. So Pat Summitt and Buddy Ryan both passed away contemporaneously with one another. As the tributes have been forthcoming, and it's kind of interesting, when considering who they were and their background and what they meant to their respective sports. It's sort of interesting to see the interplay between how they're viewed and mourned and what their legacy is going to be. I'll leave Pat Summitt for the final. I want to talk about Buddy Ryan a little bit. Buddy Ryan was an ass. It's okay to say that and still mourn his demise, right? I saw people say, "Oh, you can't say anything bad about Buddy Ryan because he died." Well, yeah, you can. You can still honor his legacy, but acknowledge who he was. And I respect what he meant to the game of football. And obviously he's going to continue to provide us with a ton of entertainment and whatnot through his two sons who are in the coaching profession, Rex Ryan and Rob Ryan, now coaching together up in Buffalo. We'll have to get to Buffalo. We'll have to talk about the Buffalo Bills. Football's just around the corner. It's going to, that pairing is going to be entertaining. I'm not sure how successful it's going to be, but it's going to be entertaining. But, Buddy Ryan passed away, and it's sad when someone dies. And he had a great legacy in terms of football, but the man was an ass. And, so I think it's okay to acknowledge that. You can't, whitewash. Just because someone dies, you can't ignore who and what they were. So I couldn't let this show go without just weighing in my 2 cents there on the Buddy Ryan thing. Pat Summitt, you guys, I'm probably going to get, I was like, I'm going to talk about Pat Summitt. I'm going to cry. It's going to be awful. Everybody's going to hear me, snot-nosed crying on air. Hopefully I won't do that. But, it really is heartbreaking, that Pat Summitt has passed away. She meant so much to women's basketball. She was women's basketball, but, she also meant a lot to sports in general because of who she was and because of the influence that she had. And we can't ignore that. I mean, it's okay to celebrate her legacy in terms of what she meant to women's basketball. We wouldn't have women's basketball as we know it without Pat Summitt. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We would not. And so, she is women's basketball as far as I'm concerned. I think a lot of people would agree with that. It used to be, as much as she meant to women's basketball, Pat Summitt could have coached the men's game and had opportunities to coach the men's game. And she apparently, as history has told us, she didn't do that. She opted not to. She chose not to. And in a way that always bothered me. I felt like she should have, or maybe she owed it to us to do that. But as I've reflected on her life, her legacy, and read the stories and all that, I think that I've come to peace and understanding with that decision, because I realize now that women's basketball meant so much to her that she didn't want to detract at all from that. She wanted to make sure that women's basketball took precedence, and that there was a place for women in to play basketball, to have that spotlight in that arena and that cachet. She gave women's basketball that cachet. And, as I've thought about that, I didn't know that it was possible, but I've come to respect her all the more for that. Women have to, obviously, we have to go out in, what has traditionally been men's dominated professions, but there should be a place for women. It took me a long time to recognize that. I really kind of fought against that, but there should be a place for women to have their game. They should have, they should have the opportunity to do whatever. But it's good to have that. Women's basketball is good, and I'm so thankful that she didn't do what I wanted her to do, and leave women's basketball and go coach and be sort of a trailblazer, coaching men's basketball. Women's basketball was that important to her, and she chose to honor that importance and to work to make women's basketball, what it is. And she was right to do that. And, it's really been, you knew what a great person she was, but reading all the stories and hearing all the ways that she impacted, the people that she came in contact with, what an amazing woman. And it's a sad day. It's a sad time in sports that we've lost such a great ambassador, such a great sports personality, great sports figure. And my heart goes out to her family and friends and to everyone who she impacted. Rest in peace, Pat. You're definitely going to be missed. You were such a great ambassador for the University of Tennessee. You made sure that your players were not just good players, but good people. Every single player graduated. Your legacy is just so amazing, and the world is less bright, and the world lost a really great person, and so we're going to miss you. Rest in peace, Pat. All right, well, that's it for today. I almost did it. I almost managed to get through that little segment without crying. I did get choked up. Pat deserves that. She such a great person and such a great coach that it's okay to get choked up about her. So thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I don't know what kind of schedule we're going to be on for the interim future. We're going to get back in full swing and do some longer shows. We did an hour and a half today. That's pretty good. A return back show, hour and a half. That's pretty good. So I'm rather proud of that. I'll let you know. You can follow me on Twitter, Sports by Sharona. I'll let you know what we're going to be doing in terms of a schedule through the sort of the summer months. And then when football gets back in full swing, we'll definitely be back on at least a 1 day a week schedule. We might not do a show every week until training camp starts, but they're just around the corner, like a month away. Training camps are a month away, so we'll see how that goes. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Bat Talk with Sharona. I'm your host. My name is Sharona. Again, you can follow me on Twitter, Sports by Sharona. Check out my website. I've got an article that's getting ready to come out on my website, sportsbysharona.com. Check it out, and that's pretty much the only social media accounts that that you should follow. I don't check my Facebook hardly any at all. If you follow me on Facebook, I'm sorry. I'm terrible about Facebooking. Have a great day. We'll probably be back next week, but again, we'll let you know on social media. So thanks for listening.